Well, let's move on to X slash Twitter. I'm going to continue to refer to it as Twitter for the time being, if just to poke the bear there. But obviously, there was this news story that came out that Elon's looking at introducing a $1 charge for new users to the platform, even to do basic features. So basically, just to access the platform at all, you're going to have to be charged for $1. Now, I'll also point out that this is the start, so it might be for new users now. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be for everyone in short order, because he's looking for ways to make money off the platform. And this, look, he can do whatever he likes. He runs the thing. But from my perspective, I've been contemplating whether to keep using our account going forward. Controversial, I know, but the reality is that in doing deep dives into the stats of our podcast, the audio and the video, it's clear that I think it's less than 2% of all the views are coming from Twitter or slash X. And this, like, if I now have to, like, eventually, like, if he starts rolling it out to any user that's on the platform, yes, okay, it's $1, so that's not, but it's the principle of the thing. It puts it behind a paywall, and now I'm like, well, okay, well, now you're going to push me off the platform now, because I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting move, and it's one that I'm sure must have really part of this business plan must have been sort of created right back at the start when he first came in. And so many things come with monetization as well. So, I mean, Elon's very good, in a business sense. So he'll be prepared to grow or indeed shrink X to whatever level is sustainable as per the income. And I'm sure that's his grander plan. So if he halves the number of users on Twitter, but it becomes financially sustainable, in his mind, I'm sure he will have achieved it. Any investors, will say, yeah, he's achieved it, even if ultimately he decreases the notional value of Twitter in the process. He'll have a functioning business that sustains itself. So maybe that's part of the program. But I think for ordinary users, if I can use that term, and I started off on Twitter back in 2007, but haven't been there for probably a decade. Once you bring payment onto these platforms, once you tweak algorithms on these platforms, once you create business models on these platforms, it's no longer a platform that's really free to use. And I mean that in a monetary sense, but also in terms of a choice. You don't get choice, you don't get any of those things. So these are big changes, and these will ultimately decide what Twitter's like in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right there. I mean, I personally have question marks over his business acumen anyway, because he seems to have done a pretty good job of driving advertisers away just with some of his behaviour on the platform. And because I'm a contrarian to a lot of points of view here, I kind of wonder, I think there's a myth around his supposed genius in terms of how good he is at these things. And look, we'll see what happens. Like, I don't think it's going to self-combust or disappear or whatever, and it may turn into something completely different, which I'm sure is what he's trying to do. This idea of the one app that does everything. Whether or not he can do that is another thing. But I think
whether or not anyone wants to pay for that one app that does.
absolutely, and I don't know if. I mean, like a classic example of an app that does that is WeChat, but that was developed, obviously being a Chinese app. It's an entirely different environment where there's an encouragement to do everything in the app when you're in China, but I don't know if that correlates over to to Twitter in that same aspect. But regardless, it depends on a whole lot of factors. I just think that this move will ultimately deter a whole bunch of users from using the platform because it's a barrier to entry, even if it's like a psychological in principle thing, because $1's not a lot. But when you consider what you're getting, taking that extra step over that barrier might be a little bit too much for most people.
Oh, I completely agree. And, I think it's interesting what you say about the one app for everything. We saw that 10 years ago at peak Facebook. And, obviously the technologies weren't as advanced, and, you know, things weren't quite as monetized as they were. But, back in 2014 or 2015, if you weren't on Facebook, you had a problem because everyone else was. Now there's loads of choices to basically connect with people, and Twitter's just one of them now. And it was always slightly different in terms of being a social platform anyway. Once you take away that free access, that ability to come and go, and the ability to choose from your perspective what you see, instead you start getting told what you're going to see. Yeah, I'm not sure that I'd want to pay for that service.